guys. Good to see you. Um, just to introduce ourselves, I'm Andrew with Blue House Therapy and St. Louis Family Counseling.
I'm Anna Kissing in St. Louis with Cozy Chair Counseling.
And I'm Catherine Barton with Uplift and Connect Counseling in St. Louis as well.
And
And
we're
the
the
three of
three
us
couples.
are
Sorry,
three couples therapists.
great minds think alike.
That's right. That's right. Today we're going to talk about the cycle. What is the cycle? What is this cycle that couples that we see um, get into? I sometimes call it a dance, sometimes it's a cycle, sometimes whatever you want to call it. And what I think what if you're wondering what it looks like, it's kind of how you're feeling when you are in an argument. The argument could be about a number of different things. Sometimes it feels like we're arguing about it's the same thing, but it's a different topic, but it feels the same, right? And um, often, not always, in a couple, one person we call shows up kind of as a withdrawer, and the other person sort of shows up as a pursuer. And we have other videos that will show up on our site that talk about those two in more depth. Um, but the cycle is something that gets created together by both couples, right? So what does it look like? Often it could look like, well, there's a problem in the relationship, right? And one person, the withdrawer, is like, ooh, this is a little scary. I don't want to lean into this. I don't want to go into this fire. I think the best way to deal with this is to not say anything, to back away, to kind of go do my own thing. Whereas then the partner pursuer is like, wait a second, here's a problem and you're just ignoring it. We need to deal with this problem. And so then the pursuer comes at it, which then sort of triggers the withdrawer to like, whoa, this is too much. I can't deal with this. And then the argument, then they go away, and then it feels like the pursuer feels like their partner's not there dealing with it, and then we just kind of go back and forth with the same thing. I don't know that I said that all that well. What do you guys experience? How do you guys experience it?
I think of it as this infinity loop of sadness and conflict, and it just feeds into each other. So I'm trying to do this in the camera, right? So
Yeah.
it's an infinity loop of there's something that happens and it's going to trigger, it's going to push on some scar tissue of one of the partners, and that's going to make them feel a way, some way. It's going to hit some sort of deep need or sadness or pain. And then they're going to have some thoughts about themselves, some feelings about things, but then they're going to act out from a place of feeling big feelings. They're going to do a behavior. And that's going to show up in this dance. It's going to show up in this cycle, this dynamic between this couple. And so they're going to do a behavior, and it could be maybe they're lashing out, maybe they scream and yell, maybe they start criticizing, right? Or maybe they pull away, like you were saying, Andrew. Maybe it's like, oh, this is too scary. I don't want to say anything that's going to ruin my relationship. I don't want to make my partner hurt. I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to say anything. It could look like all kinds of different things, but that behavior is gonna trigger the other person, and they're gonna have their thoughts, feelings, emotions, and their behaviors, and that's gonna trigger that other. It is just this constant loop. And what we see all the time, and is couples get stuck in this crummy dance that ultimately the dance is the enemy. It's not your partner that is the enemy. It is the cycle, this dynamic that takes over. And when that gets to be so loud, it's impossible to hear your partner and what they're really feeling, right?
Yeah.
I would just add, overall, it's that loss of secure emotional connection,
Mhm.
right? When we're and I would also say too, it's kind of reactions to reactions. Like you said, with the
Yeah.
fear, right? If I notice something or my partner says something or does something and I react to that and I show up in that space, and then my partner sees my reaction and they react to my reaction, right? And that's part of that loop and how we get stuck. I also like to add, it's the reactions, the behaviors we have, those as our protections, right? And those protections come from a space, obviously, of keeping us safe. And it's something we've learned, right? It's something we learned maybe growing up. It's something we learned from other relationships. So they have a purpose, right? My reaction is there because it has a purpose to keep me safe. But in the context of our emotional romantic relationship, it it feels like a block or a pushback or an attack or a criticism, right? And so it's figuring out what those protections are, and it's figuring out how they show up in the cycle.
Yeah, it's a cycle of disconnection is what it is between the partners, right? And I think often we're not even aware of what it is that it's doing to us, like the really the scary part. And so we then try to not have some of that like primary emotional fear, whatever it might be, of, sometimes it could be of I'm alone in this. I I have, or there can be I'm failing at this. I'm not good enough. All of these types of things, or these really deep fears that um, then show up in the cycle as, you know, if I come to me, like, come do this, don't leave me alone, and kind of aggressive about it. Or it's like, I'm going to fail if I go into this fire. So I'm just going to back off. And so that I'm not going to fail, I'm not going to, because I know if I fail, then it's just going to get worse. But often the trigger for one person is kind of the defense mechanism for the others. Like, come to me,
Exactly.
right? Come to me is like is like, whoa, this is a lot. I need to back off. And
Mhm.
but then the backing off is like the trigger for the other person. Like, where are you? You're not there. You're leaving me alone.
That's the biggest piece of all of that. That's why couples get stuck. Because it's the thing we do to keep our relationship healthy. What we think we're trying, we try so hard to keep our relationship healthy and to get back on track and to reconnect again. And it's the very thing we do so much to try to get back to our partner is the very thing that's pushing them away. I see all the time if someone wants to talk, I don't feel good, something happened, let's talk about it. And so a partner, the pursuer, and we'll talk in other videos exactly what this language means. It's kind of different language, pursuer and withdrawer, but someone who wants to talk about stuff and clear the air and talk about feelings, we'll say, we need to talk about it. Let's talk about it. Here are all the ways that I feel hurt by you. Here's all my vulnerability, all my big emotions. Well, if someone's hearing all that, ideally we want them to be open to that, but not when you're dysregulated, not when you're fighting with your partner. You're going to hear all that as criticism, as blame. You're going to hear all that, and you're going to be expressing it maybe in kind of a critical way. You never do this for me. I always do this for you, right? So it's the thing, and yet that person who's communicating that is trying their best to try to salvage the relationship. And yet it's the very thing that's pushing their partner away,
Yeah.
right? That's
And they're
just
doing, I
one
mean,
example
they're
of
doing what
many.
seems to work for them. Like it's worked for them in the past in some way,
Yeah, it's a
right?
survival technique.
Yeah.
It's a way they're trying to repair. There's something about it that's worked. But when couples get stuck in that, it just becomes it becomes unhealthy. They
It
can't
kind
figure
of
the way
feels
out.
it kind of feels like that there's no good choice almost. And what I mean by that is either I do the thing that hurts my partner, which is get loud or remove myself, or I have to deal with some really primary, scary personal stuff
On my own.
on my own.
Sorry, my dogs are joining in the conversation too. They've got opinions as well. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Right. So either we do that thing that hurts my partner, or we have to deal with the scary, scary stuff ourselves. Yeah.
Well, and I think, well, just what the two of you said before about how it worked in the past, right? Like our reactions, they worked in the past because they also served a different purpose, right? They were there to keep me safe. But when you put it in the context of a relationship, it's not working because it's pushing us further apart, right? If I get defensive or if I walk away and my partner sees me walk away and they're like, oh, they just don't care about me, right? Like I'm walking away because I care. I'm walking away because I don't want to make this worse, because I don't like it what I don't like what happens when we get up here. So I'm walking away to prevent that. Right. And it's really hard to see that when you're in that, like you said, like dysregulated state. And so it worked in the past because it stopped the pain because I walked away and it was gone. But then in this situation, my partner sees that and it's pushing us further apart, right? Because they're telling themselves my partner doesn't care, they're not here for me.
Yeah. And so our goal is to be able to see our partner's moves for what they are, take them less personally, and kind of give them permission for the very thing that sort of drives us nuts, right? And and recognize like, oh, this is why they're doing what they're doing. They're really fighting for something that I care about as well.
Yeah.
And that's why couples therapy can be so helpful, because couples, just the two of them, when they're both freaking out and having a hard time, it's impossible to see the cycle a lot of times without the training, right? We've done all this training, we know all this stuff, right? But that's why couples therapy can help give you a lot of insight. You can plot it out, you can understand all the pieces, but then also it gives you a chance to step away to understand, like you were saying, to understand my partner's doing this because they're trying to protect the relationship. It builds empathy, it builds compassion. You can expand out beside your own inner world, outside of your own inner world of this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. You understand your partner too. And then you can figure out ways of interrupting the cycle. And that is the best. The good news is, guys, is that there are actually good cycles too. So we can develop really healthy, strong cycles of communication and that work similarly, but all in good ways that bring connection instead of disconnection. Would you guys agree with that?
100%. That's what
Yeah.
we're after. We're after like the positive cycle.
Exactly.
All right. So we'll talk about that too in a later video too, what the positive cycle can look like.
All
All
right.
right. Well, thank you too. I thought that was great. Good to see you both and three couples therapists and we're out.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.